So hello everyone. So under craniofacial surgery topic, so we'll be discussing about the facial fractures. And before getting on to the details, let us discuss about the anatomy of the facial bones. So I am Dr. Chethan, plastic surgeon. So we'll begin with the anatomy of the facial bones. So under anatomy of the facial bones, we have to know the classification. So we have upper third, which is formed by the frontal bones. Lower third is formed by mandible. So in the middle third, we have maxilla, laterally zygoma. In the medial, we have nasal bones or ethmoidal bones. So we have 14 facial bones. Among that, we have mandible and also the vomer. These are the individual bones. Apart from those, the rest of the bones are paired bones. So another way to classify the facial bones is fractures involving the occlusion, dental occlusion. So the maxilla and the mandible, these form the dental occlusion. So there are other bones which doesn't involve in the dental occlusion, or laterally we have zygoma, medially nasal bones or ethmoidal bones, also the bones forming the orbital cavity. This doesn't involve in the dental occlusion. So this decides the whether the fracture is involving the upper third of the face, middle third or the lower third. It dictates the approach of the surgical approach for surgery. So in case of upper third bones, we have bicornal approach, which gives access to all of the cranial bones and also the zygoma and orbital cavity bones. And in middle third, we have Gillies approach, gingival, transconjunctival, and the infraorbital approaches also. In case of lower third, we have the mandible, where if the fracture is involving the angle of the mandible, we can have Ridson's approach, which is the submandibular approach. Also, we have the other approaches like transcervical approaches also, which we'll be discussing in detail in future. So let's discuss about the fracture of the zygoma. When we describe the fracture zygoma, usually we describe it as a zygomatico-maxillary complex fracture, because isolated fracture of the zygoma in a clinical scenario is very rare. Most of the times it will be involved associated maxilla fractures, maxillary antrum, or it can be associated with the infraorbital rim fractures or the temporal bone fractures, even the frontal bone fractures. So thus, the fracture in case of anatomy of the zygoma, it is a pyramidal shaped bone. It has 5 processes. Here it is the frontal process of the zygoma. It articulates with the frontal bone, forming the zygomatico-frontal suture. And this is the process that articulates with the temporal bone, forming the arch. And this is the maxillary process of the zygoma, articulating with the zygomatico-maxillary buttress, articulating with the maxillary bone. And this is the part of the zygoma forming the infraorbital rim. So henceforth, I will be referring it as a IOR, infraorbital rim. And also one more process is there, which is not made out in this lateral view, which forms the lateral wall of the orbit. So thus we have 5 processes, and in AP view here you will be able to make it out. So here we have the fracture of the process which involves with the zygomatico-frontal bone, that is we call it as a ZF, and this is the process which forms arch, articulating with the temporal bone. We have ZM, and this is the part forming the infraorbital rim, and this is what I was referring for, the part of the zygoma forming the lateral wall of the orbit. Thus it has 5 processes, and the zygoma forms the rim of the orbital cavity and also the lateral wall of the orbit. So coming on to the clinical features, this is the classical zygomatic fracture phases, where ophthalmic features we have patient is having subconjunctival hemorrhage or subconjunctival ecchymosis, and also there is, you can make out in the bird's view, there is loss of effacement of the malar eminence. So this is also a feature where there will be loss of prominence of the zygomatic-maxillary process, that is the malar eminence is not visible, and also the patient, this is the normal side, where we will be having the infraorbital foramen from which the infraorbital nerve exits. So infraorbital nerve usually supplies the upper lip and also the lateral wall of the nose and the lower lid. So this part will be supplied with the infraorbital nerve. Whenever there is a fracture of zygoma, patient can have numbness or paresthesia in this distribution of infraorbital nerve. And also the patient can have ipsilateral epistaxis. This is most of the involvement of the ipsilateral zygomatico the maxillary antrum. In case of hemosinus of the maxilla sinus, patient will have this ipsilateral epistaxis. Apart from all these features, patient can have the unusual feature that is trismus. Trismus is difficulty in opening the mouth. Although the fracture of the zygoma, which is not involving in the dental occlusion, the patient can still have a trismus, that is difficulty in opening the mouth. Whenever the patient is asked to open his mouth, patient will have a restriction. This is explained by the abutment of the coronoid process of the mandible by the impacted zygomatic arch fracture, also in retrodisplaced zygoma. This now we can see this. So this is the coronoid process of the mandible. This is the condyle. So the posterior process, this is condyle, which you most of the times come across. This is a fracture of the neck or condyle. This is the most common fracture of the mandible. So when we come to this coronoid process, this is being compressed by the impacted fracture of the zygoma. You can make it out. Also in case of posteriorly dislocated fracture of the zygoma abutting on the coronoid process. So thus the cause for trismus in case of fractured zygoma is abutment of the coronoid process. And coming to the ophthalmic features, we saw the subconjunctival ecchymosis. So there also the feature which is described is downward slant of the palpebral fissure. So in case of laterally displaced zygoma fracture, this is the lateral canthal attachment of the lateral canthal ligament to the Whitnall's tubercle. So there will be a downward slant of the palpebral fissure. And also patient can have enophthalmos because there will be increase in the cavity of the orbit, the volume. So the eyeballs appears to be sunken. So we call it as enophthalmos in case of laterally displaced fracture of the zygoma. Also patient can have exophthalmos if the fracture is displaced medially. So apart from that, patient can also have diplopia. This is anti-mongoloid slant, downward slanting of the lateral palpebral fissure. So this is in case of diplopia, patient is having double vision. The cause can be hematoma or edema around the extraocular muscle, or can be neuromuscular injury, or in case of disruption of the inferior rectus or inferior oblique muscle. So having said about the diplopia, there are tests. That is, one is finger gaze test, that is similar to the how we measure the field of vision. So in the distribution of that muscle, if the patient is having double vision, then we consider it as entrapment or the paralysis of that particular muscle. Whereas in case of force reduction test, we differentiate between the permanent and the temporary diplopia. So if there is a failure, the test is positive, then it indicates the paralysis, that is permanent paralysis of the muscle, or if there is only entrapment, this amounts to only the temporary diplopia. If we release the entrapment or if we fix the fracture, then the possibility is that patient will the double vision will subside. So we do this test is, this is the force reduction test where we'll be holding the inferior rectus tendon. So this is about 2 mm below the limbus, that is corneoscleral junction. We'll be holding with a tissue forceps and we'll be checking the direction. If there is a restriction in the distribution, so we call it as the force reduction test positive. So this is done in case of preoperative period before diagnosis, and also before reduction of the fracture we are supposed to do this test, and after reduction of the fracture also we should make sure that there is no further entrapment of the orbital fat or the muscle. And also if you are placing a strut or bone graft in case of infraorbital limb fracture for the floor of the orbital cavity, then also you are supposed to check after placing a graft or for that matter synthetic mesh. Nasal symptoms, we saw the ipsilateral epistaxis or hematosinus. And coming to the diagnosis, clinically you can diagnose the fracture of zygoma. Most of the times it is associated with other panfacial fractures. So we are bound to get the CT done. And if you are given an option, you should go for 3D reconstruction of the face. So this is the coronoid process. Although it is far away, it is not being aborted from the fracture of the zygoma. This is a depressed fracture of the zygoma you can make out. So it is in close relation, which can cause trismus. So coming to the management of the fracture of zygoma, we have, so all the fracture of zygoma we do not operate unless the patient complains patient is having aesthetic concern in case of depressed fracture of the zygoma, or if the patient is having diplopia, that is double vision, or enophthalmos or exophthalmos. or if the patient, it is a part of panfacial fracture also, we can treat the fracture. If we are operating through the bicornal approach, we can very well reduce the fracture of zygoma also. So we have extraoral and intraoral approach. Under intraoral approach, we have the maxilla zygomatico-maxillary buttress fractures can be tackled by upper GB sulcus approach, that is maxillary vestibular approach. It is also known as Keen's approach. We'll be showing it later. Also, you can approach through the maxillary antrum endoscopic approach. So in case of extraoral approach, bicornal approach is considered when there is a panfacial fractures. You can always very well go for bicornal approach. And the Gillis temporal approach is reserved for isolated fracture of the zygoma, which are depressed fracture. This is for only depressed fractures. And superolateral approach is for ZF, zygomatico-frontal process fractures, that is ZF suture is involved. Whereas in case of lower eyelid and the transconjunctival approaches are reserved for infraorbital rim fractures. So this is about the bicornal approach, where the incision extends from one of the tragus to the opposite tragus, and we are supposed to not to damage the superficial temporal artery. And this is the more morbid incision. It is considered only in case of panfacial fractures. So it gives access to most of the cranial skull wall bones, and also the zygoma, and also the fracture of the frontal bone. So except for the mandible and the maxilla, this is mandible and maxilla, and also part of the infraorbital rim, we don't have access through this bicornal approach. Also the temporomandibular joint also we can approach through this bicornal approach. So this is temporal Gillis approach. This is reserved for depressed isolated fracture of the zygoma. So here we'll be taking an incision in the hairline, and we are supposed to preserve the superficial temporal artery also. So here we take incision, go deep the temporalis fascia, but we'll stay superficial the temporalis muscle, and we'll be giving an outward pressure. We use Rose zygomatic elevator. So we keep the gauze roll of the gauze piece, which act as a torque. So we'll be giving an outward pressure that will reduce the depressed fracture. So also the Bristow's elevator is also described along with the Rose elevator for the reduction of the depressed fracture of zygoma. Coming to the lateral eyebrow approach, we have, this is the eyebrow and this is the zygomatico-frontal suture. So we can access by the incision will be done in the lateral part of the eyebrow. And also the upper eyelid approach, this is zygomatico-frontal suture. So here will be the eyelid. So we can take an incision in the upper tarsus to get access to ZF fracture. So lower eyelid approaches, we have subciliary, subtarsal, and also the extended subciliary, and also the infraorbital rim. These are all described for IOR. So subciliary and subtarsal incisions, the main complication is entropion or ectropion for that matter. So it is mainly due to the malalignement while suturing the tarsal plate. The eyelashes might be directed inwards or outwards. It will cause permanent irritation to the patient. This is the disadvantage of these subciliary and subtarsal approaches. Infraorbital incision is less aesthetic. It can give you a bad scar. Whereas in case of transconjunctival approach, we can go through the conjunctival sac where we will be taking an incision in the lower palpebral conjunctiva. Also, you can get access from the lateral canthotomy, you can get wider access. This is more aesthetic procedure. There is no scar after the transconjunctival approach, but it is equally technically challenging also. So percutaneous approach, we have stasis bone hook where we'll be just placing an hook and giving an outward pressure. And the screw traction method is also there. Simultaneously, while putting the screw, we can give a traction also. So the Carroll-Girard screw that is being described for this percutaneous method. And the transoral, that is the incision in the upper GB sulcus, it is described in case of zygomatico-maxillary buttress fractures. Coming to the fixation, so depending upon the severity, we can do 1-point fixation, 2-point, or up to 4-point is described. So 1-point fixation is described in case of zygomatico-maxillary buttress. If you are fixing only the ZM, it is called 1-point fixation. If you are fixing zygomatico-maxillary along with the ZF, this is called 2-point fixation. Apart from ZM and ZF, if you are fixing infraorbital rim, we call it as a 3-point fixation, which is ideal for a stable fixation. So whereas 4-point fixation is advised in case of comminuted fracture of the zygoma, that is we call it as a tripod fracture, where it will be involving all the processes. So it demands bicornal incision. So always 4-point fixation if you are going, then you have to choose the bicornal approach. Most of the times it will be advised in case of panfacial fractures. This is 1-point fixation where we will be fixing only the zygoma, that is zygomatico-maxillary buttress. And in case of 2-point fixation, we have, apart from ZM, we also fix the ZF. So 3-point fixation being, it includes IOR also. 4-point fixation is in case of panfacial fractures. So this is how it looks, all the 4-point fixation. So it depends. If you're initially we'll have to go for 1-point fixation. If the fracture is not stable, you should go for 2-point fixation, 3-point, likewise 4-point fixation, which is to be decided before taking up the panfacial fracture. So let's come coming to the questions. We have a patient presents with subconjunctival hemorrhage, palpable ecchymosis, and swelling around an eye. So he is likely to have sustained fracture of which one of the following bone? The options given are frontal bone, zygoma, nasal, maxilla, and anterior cranial fossa fractures. Having been discussed about the fracture of zygoma, obviously we can go for zygoma. That is the answer. While for the teaching purpose, the nasal fracture, if the fracture is involving nasoethmoid region, that is the bilateral nasoethmoid fractures, it can cause bilateral black eye. Also the fracture of the maxilla, which is a horizontal fracture of the maxilla involving both the sides, that is we call it as Lefort's 1. This can also cause bilateral hematoma. So also the anterior cranial fossa fractures. So these three bones can cause spectacle hematoma, whereas zygoma of one side can cause definitely around a single eye hematoma. The zygomatico-frontal suture is a key landmark to the diagnosis and treatment of fractures of zygoma. It is located at which one of the following? They are asking about ZF suture, anatomical landmark, whether it is at the level of lateral canthus or above the level of the lateral canthus, below it, or lateral to the lateral canthus. So this is the ZF suture. This is the lateral canthus. Obviously, the ZF suture is above the lateral canthus, and the landmarks we have seen the upper eyelid incision, eyebrow incision, and also the upper tarsus incision. So to be specific, it is 8 to 10 mm above the level of the lateral canthus. That is the answer. So next question is, which one of the following approaches should be selected for treating an isolated fracture displacement of zygomatico-maxillary buttress? So when there is isolated fracture, we can definitely rule out the coronal approach is considered for panfacial fractures. Dingman approach is also one of the approach for close reduction of zygoma. This is for ZF. Endoscopic approach, you can go for this answer also. This is through the maxillary antrum, also the intraoral approach. So among these two options, most commonly performed is intraoral approach. We can definitely go for intraoral approach. That is the answer. Also endoscopic approach is also a possibility. The strongest bone of the face is which one of the following? The options given are frontal bone, mandible, nasal bone, zygoma, and maxilla. So with the minimum idea, we can rule out nasal bone, zygoma, and maxilla. These are all porous bones, unlikely to be strong. So among frontal bone and the mandible, we are likely to go around with mandible. So without knowing the facts, it's very difficult to guess. The frontal bone is strongest bone of the face, requiring 150 gram per square inch of force for the production of fracture. This is due to the dense structure of the bone. So there is one more explanation where the pneumatization of the frontal sinus begins around 2 years to 12 years. So even in childhood, it is more stronger than adult. So if any adult comes with the fracture of the frontal bone, it should ring a bell that it is a injury of high energy mechanism. That is the magnitude of trauma is more. Next question is, displaced traumatic fracture of the zygoma would produce a deformity which would clinically manifest the following features except. They are asking about the clinical feature of the zygoma, the loss of prominence of cheek, that visa malar effacement is lost, and the step deformity in case of infraorbital margin. If the fracture is associated with the IOR, then definitely patient can feel a step in the margin of the infraorbital region. So displaced zygomatico-maxillary buttress is also a possibility. Deformity in the FZ region is also a possibility. And the upward slanting of the lateral canthus, that is not the answer. That is the answer where we have only the downward slanting is described. This is due to the detachment of the lateral canthus ligament from the Whitnall's tubercle. So which one of the following is useful for management of compound comminuted fracture of the zygoma? So reduction of the arch, frontozygomatic distension, and also the IOR fixation. They are basically asking about the point of fixation. So in case of comminuted fracture, if the option is given, we should definitely go for all of the above, that is 4-point fixation or 3-point fixation for that matter. So which one of the following should be selected to manage a depressed fracture of the zygomas that we saw Gillis approach, Gillis temporal approach? So which one of the following is a part of mandible that is directly implicated in causing restricted mouth opening, that is cause for trismus is coronoid process. So one more question is life-threatening hemorrhage in adult facial fractures is defined as condition where there is a loss of. The answer is the explanation is taken from the Sebastian textbook. It is 3 units of blood or HB less than 9, that is around 27 hematocrit. So one more is this thing, blunt facial trauma hemorrhage. This is also taken from the Sebastian. So the management of the blunt facial trauma and hemorrhage, in case of the flow chart, it shows the primary priorities ABC. Apart from that, correction of the coagulopathy is also mentioned. If the patient is stable, you can definitely go for fracture fixation in less than 4 or 5 days before the malunion occurs, the callus is formed. So if the patient is unstable, if the bleeding is skull-based, he has specifically mentioned that skull-based bleeding, you should go for directly angiographic embolization. If the patient is unstable and you are very much sure that the bleeding is from the mid-face region, so you should go for urgent fracture fixation on the angiography table. That is, you can get away with emergency fracture fixation, that is fracture reduction if you do, and if the hemorrhage continues, you should go for angiographic embolization. So in case of skull-based fracture, you directly go for angiographic embolization, whereas in case of origin is from the mid-face, the fracture involving the mid-facial bones, then you can give a try of fracture reduction emergency. If it is working, then it is okay. Otherwise, you should go for the angiographic embolization. So these are the 2 options explained. So I think we'll conclude. We have only 4th line of ETS also. Thank you.